All right. Hey, thanks for joining us today. I'm happy to have Jennifer Noble, principal of Columbus Christian Academy in Whiteville, North Carolina. And Jennifer is very gracious to be my first guest and a great friend too, somebody who I have a lot of respect for. So a brief introduction. So Jennifer, you've been principal there for 5 years, right?
That's correct.
And you have led through COVID. You have led through like a major move now, moving campuses and all that. So I've got a few questions. What I'm hoping you can do is, as we go through this, just kind of unpack, help people who are listening pick up some tools for leadership. They may be in similar roles or I don't know, very different roles, but anybody who's leading will have some crossover to your experience or some challenges you face. So as we go through these, just kind of leave people with some wisdom or some tools based on your own experience. So first question I've got for you is tell us about yourself and your professional journey that got you to where you are today to being the principal of a school.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me. I don't feel like I'm qualified to answer all these
Oh,
questions,
stop
but
it.
I will do the best that I can. So I do live in a small town in North Carolina. I was in the banking industry for about 10 years. My degree is actually business management. And then when I got pregnant with our second child, shifted my focus to come home and was a stay-at-home mom for 4 years. And it was during that time I met this crazy pastor, and he had these crazy ideas and asked me about helping out the church a little bit with some bookkeeping. And that's where it all kind of started. I started out helping with some bookkeeping responsibilities. And then, of course, your wonderful wife, Elena, had a vision for preschool, and she did such a great job getting that started. And I tried to help out where I could with that. And somehow I ended up as the principal. I still haven't figured that out, but that's where I am today. So that's the short version of, and I also
all
have 3 kids here.
all great ideas start with a crazy pastor. That's what I say.
Yes, this is true.
So yeah, so we brought you on when I was there. For people who don't know, so I was the pastor of a church that had Columbus Christian Academy as the ministry, one of the ministries of the church, and so I grabbed Jennifer by the hair and like threw her in there before I bailed and came over to Texas. So
Yeah,
well, very cool. So tell me about give me a little insight on your leadership role. Like, what is it you do, and the team and the staff you got? Who do you oversee? How many people? All that kind of thing.
There's about 20 people. And the cool thing about the staff is, so I attended Columbus Christian Academy from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. So several of the teachers that are still there taught me. So I was their student, and now I've
Nice.
come alongside and work beside them. So that's been fun. It actually wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be. So that's part of the staff dynamic. Then we have, so they've been there 20 plus years. And then we have some newer people that have come on board, and they of course see things very differently, have different ideas and perspectives, and putting those two together has been a real fun process. It really has been, and I'm not being sarcastic. It's been fun to watch because they've learned from each other. So that's been kind of cool. I tell a lot of people my role is just to set the tone. I try to keep calm
Mhm.
and the peace. One of the teachers said she sees me kind of as her mom, which is funny because she's older than me. But she said when she was younger, if she was in uncertain circumstances or whatever, she would always look at her mama's face. And if her mama was calm, she knew everything was okay. So she
Mhm.
said, I kind of look at you that way. Like when I'm not really sure what's going on, I just look at you and I know, it's okay. So no pressure there for me, to keep everything calm. They're looking at my face. So a lot of my leadership role there is just kind of keeping the peace, I think, with 20 plus people.
Yeah, and 200 kids and families and activities and all the rest. Yeah, so
All right.
I was reading a textbook for a class, leadership class I'm teaching at a college, and it said sometimes the greatest testament to a leader is what doesn't happen when they're in charge, not necessarily what does happen. So yeah, like keeping a lid on everything and keeping things calm sometimes I think really is like the greatest role of a leader, because if you lost your head, then all of a sudden the sky's falling and the earth is opening up and swallowing people, and
Yeah,
it's just absolute chaos. So
that's
I think,
definitely been something I learned. Like panic is so easy to spread quickly.
yep.
So keep that from happening. That's a big part of my job.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if you're panicking on the inside, you got to have a nice calm face on the outside.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, so a big part of leading, I know, is communicating, and that's kind of one of the passions of mine, and kind of one of the focuses of this podcast is just how do you communicate? What are some of the struggles you face? So tell us about a time when you would say that you failed at communicating, and something you learned from that.
Well, there are so many times I failed at communicating. I want to start off with, so that goes with personal side as well as the professional side. So personally, when we first got married, I was terrible for things would bother me or it would upset me, but I wouldn't say anything. You know, I didn't want conflict. I didn't want confrontation. So I'm like, it's not a big deal. Just let it go. Then it would happen again. Same thing. Just let it go. So then one little trivial thing would set me off and I would just, explode. And Jamie's over there looking at me like, what is wrong with you? And it wasn't necessarily that one instance or that one little thing that I was upset about. It was the multiple different things.
Right.
But he didn't know that. I hadn't communicated that to him. I had failed to tell him, hey, this ticked me off. I don't like this. So that was on me. You know, I had failed to let him know. And I think that really also comes over to the professional side of things where it's little things and it's a bunch of little things that add up. And if you can catch it in time before it implodes, then that's where it's at. And just simple stuff like, for example, our high school supervisor came to me one time a few days before graduation. She's like, where are the honor cords? And I look at her, I'm like, I don't know, where are the honor cords? And she thought I ordered them. I thought she ordered them. Like, oh, this isn't good. They're about to graduate. We're not going to have honor cords at the end of the world. So, of course, we tracked them down. We were able to get them in time. It wasn't a big catastrophe. And I know that's just a small thing, but when you have multiple small things like that happening everywhere, they become big things.
Sure.
And I realized it was important to set time apart to communicate with them directly. So one of the things I started doing after noticing just a bunch of little things like that, not necessarily anything catastrophic, but when they add up, it does become a problem. I started meeting with them one-on-one. We had a time set aside each week. So we had 3 supervisors. We have like a kindergarten department supervisor, elementary, and then middle and high school. So each one of them, I had a time set apart and I would meet with them one-on-one. And we would, the first few minutes, I would listen to them of what they need from me. What do they need to communicate to me? What do I need to know that's going on in their department? Then the next few minutes, it would be, what do I need to communicate to them? What's coming, what do they need to know about, or what do I need them to do? And then at the end, I would always ask, how can I help you? What can I do to help you with your job better? What tools do you need? And that was very helpful. But I noticed there was still like a disconnect. So I sat back and like, what am I doing wrong? And we're all one big organization. We're all on the same team. We're all striving for the same goal. But I realized I had really kind of put them in silos. I'm meeting with them one-on-one, but they're not really talking with each other.
Right.
And we all work together as a big picture. So we added in a supervisor meeting to that. So bi-weekly, we would all get together. And not only am I talking to them, but they're talking to each other about this is what's going on in my department. And it was cool to watch because you have people that have been there years. Oh, I experienced that before, and this is how I handled it. And they started networking and communicating. It opened the lines of communication between them, and I saw real strength between them, which helped with the organization. It trickled down to their team. It trickled down to the students, which goes to the families, which improves the culture overall. So
sure.
that was just cool to watch. That was one of the there's still always room for improvement. Of course, there's still times where I fail to communicate and I just have to say, I'm sorry, my bad. I didn't tell you that. So
yeah,
it didn't fix all the problems, but it was definitely a big step in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I think that's super important. The military has a term called a single point of failure, and it's basically when everything has to funnel through one person. And then if something happens to that one person, the whole thing just falls apart. And yeah, I think that's a good point about communicating is not only do you not want to be, kind of the single point of failure, but it also puts a lot of responsibility on you as the leader. If you're the only person communicating all these different messages to all these different people. And yeah, like you said, I think the more you can open those up and the more time leaders can build into their schedule, their calendar for just almost just like facilitating communication, the better off for everybody. Teachers win, you win, students win, parents win, it's good. So.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So you've been in this role, I know, for about 5 years. So and you've gone through a lot of challenges with COVID and now moving to campus and all that. So how would you say your leadership has changed over time, not just from the standpoint of the role that you do, but do you approach leading differently now than you did, say, 5 years ago?
Very much so. I would say that I tried to shift my focus more to servant leadership. In the beginning, I'm I was kind of more focused on me, and I know that sounds self-centered, not so much in that way, but in I wanted to do a good job. So I'm going to read the books and I'm going to listen to the podcast, and I've got this task and this goal, and I'm so task and goal oriented and so set on doing a good job that I lost sight of what was really important, and that was the people that I was leading. Because you're
Mhm.
not just leading followers, you're leading other leaders.
Yeah.
And it's my responsibility to kind of cultivate that. And I was losing sight of that and dropping the ball. And the meetings I just talked with you about earlier, I think that was a big part of me getting a grip and saying, okay, it's not about me. It's not about what I need to do and what I need to get done. It's about these people. It's about this organization. It's about our why. Like, why are we doing what we're doing? We're doing this
Mhm.
to reach the boys and girls for the Lord, to lead them to the Lord and then educate them along the way. And we've got a team here. I don't have to do it by myself. There's a team here of people that have the same heart, the same vision, and the same goals. So once I started pouring more into them, it was kind of crazy because it actually helped me. It was almost like multiplying myself,
Yeah.
and they took on more ownership. And then I watched them grow into their leadership and step more confidently into their calling. And it was just so cool to watch how they took more ownership. And I didn't have to do as much because those meetings, we didn't just communicate about what was going on, but we also used them for like times of professional development. We would listen to different podcasts. We did a couple book studies. We would listen to different seminars and that kind of thing. We tried to make it not just about communicating what's going on, but actually learning and growing together and getting better together.
Mhm.
And once I shifted from what do I have to do, what tasks do I have to complete, what do I need to communicate, to how can I help the team grow and be more efficient and productive, and really caring about them and building relationships with them, it was just a game changer.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I was just telling folks at my church that I said if I could really focus my role as kind of the leader, it would be to develop other, like pour myself into other people to do some of the tasks that I'm doing. And then that not only helps you in the present, but in the long term too, like those people, your work goes way beyond just how far you can stretch your own hands, even to where after you're dead and gone, like your investment is still reaping kind of generational rewards. So let me ask you another question, and this is kind of follow up a little bit off script, but how do you do that? Focus more on leadership development and pouring yourself into other people while also kind of stepping out of these other roles, because that's a challenge I face, and a lot of people I talk to, they have the same challenges as they're trying to focus their role and spend more time investing in others. There's still these tasks, that have to be done. So any advice, any wisdom on that?
Oh, that's a tough one. And it is something that's difficult to do. But one of my favorite authors and speakers is Craig Groeschel. And he said something one time that really resonated with me. He said, if a member of your team can do something to like 80% of the capacity that you can do it, let them do it. Even if it's not 100%, you've got to give it to them and let them get to that 100%. And,
Hmm.
I'd even go so far as maybe 60%. You've got to at some point let go
Yeah,
of striving for perfection and let them take it. And then you see their confidence grow as they get better at it. So, but it's a process. It's a growing process. So you have to know that you might go back before you go forward, because when you release something, it might get worse before it gets better. But overall, in the long run, it's going to end up better.
sure. Yeah, and I think that's a key part of developing others too, is actually trusting them with something. Like you can't let them develop into other leaders to join you if you don't trust them as much as you would trust yourself with a task. Just it goes a long way, I think, to show them, hey, look, I trust you. I'm not going to micromanage you. You take it and you run with it, and everybody will be better because of it. So
But
it-
one of the hard things about that too is they're not going to do it the way I'm going to do it. And I
right,
have to let go of the fact that they might have a different approach to get to the end result, but it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's just different. So
sure,
you can't micromanage. You have to kind of let them figure out their own path of again, as long as it's not, immoral, unethical, or they're not doing anything wrong,
Right.
everybody does things differently. And one of the things that John Maxwell has always said that I've is everybody can teach you something. So
Sure.
everybody along the way, whether you realize it or not, they can teach you something, and you might even learn something from watching them that you didn't know. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that communicates to everybody else in the organization too, that they're like, oh, Jennifer really trusts people. Like she doesn't just say that she trusts people. She really does. And so when it seems like it's going to make them more likely to step up and say, sure, I'll take that, because they know you're not going to micromanage them, or you're not going to, come behind their back and like do things your way after you've told them it was okay to do it their way.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. So, all right. So day-to-day challenges, what would you say is your biggest day-to-day communication challenge? And this is in a post-COVID world where now you've got 10 different communication channels, some people text, some people this, some people that. And
Yes.
so there's plenty of challenges, but what would you say is your biggest just day-to-day communication challenge?
Well, I would say right now, currently, we are in the process of moving to two different locations, and it wasn't a planned move, so it's very kind of a little chaotic. And there's a lot of information coming daily and changing by the minute.
Hmm.
So it's just a lot coming from every direction. Like you said, there's email, there's text, there's Facebook message, there's all these different ways, and getting it where it needs to go while controlling the information flow. So, and communicating with the school board, with the staff, with the families. And if you get that communication out of order, if the families know something before the staff or the school board members know something, that's not good. If your staff knows something, the school board hasn't heard about it, that's not good. And then you got Facebook. People find something out and they run Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. They're posting their spin on it, and then all this is out there, and then you read stuff that you didn't even know. So
Right.
that has probably been one of the biggest challenges right now. Is as quickly as things change, letting the people who need to know, and like you said, not having just one single point of communication, but making sure the groups of people that need to know, and that you have systems in place to get the information to the teachers, for the teachers to get it to their families, and to keep it the messaging consistent as well. And that's really hard in a social media world.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's 100%. And I think anybody who's leading any group of people from 1 to 100 people can probably sympathize with that, because it's challenging when all of a sudden you haven't even addressed this issue over here, and all of a sudden 5 other issues are waiting on you as soon as you turn and look this way, and now you've got to prioritize. Okay, so what do we do with all this, and who needs to know? And then if you haven't done a great job of empowering other leaders, then those leaders now are going to come to you and be like, what do we do with this? I don't know how to respond to this, or,
Yeah.
and it's just, you're chasing your tail all day, it feels like.
Yes, absolutely. You just nailed it. That's exactly it.
All right. This is one question I like asking everybody. If the present Jennifer Noble could visit a younger Jennifer Noble, principal of CCA and all that, what advice about leadership would you give yourself?
I think I would say live in the season that you're in. And just because you have to say no to something in a season in your life doesn't mean that it's a permanent no. Just like for you, for instance, when your kids were really young, it would have probably been really hard for you to do what you're doing now, the starting your company and doing this podcast and doing the things that you're doing. So while that might have been a no for that season in your life, when you were, running a church and your kids were small and Elena going back to school and all that stuff, it wasn't a permanent no. Now you're able to do that in this season. And when I was younger, I felt like I had to boil the ocean, is what one of my friends would always say. You can't boil the ocean. You can't do it all at one time.
Mhm.
And just because my season right now might not be at a place where I can do some of the things I want to do, it doesn't mean that I'll never be able to do them.
Right.
So going back to my younger self, instead of trying to get overwhelmed with trying to be the perfect wife, the mom, the leader, the all at one time, I would just say live in the season that you're in. Focus on where you are now. Be present where you are now, and don't try to do it all at one time. A friend of mine years ago said, I hated the Proverbs 31 woman until I realized that wasn't something she did in a day. It was something she did in her lifetime.
Mhm.
And just the small, consistent steps daily of doing what you need to do in the moment where you are. Don't look at it all at one time.
Yeah, no, that's key. And I think a big part of that is you said you had friends who would tell you good advice. Don't try to boil the ocean. Is to me, it's helpful if you have other people, friends, colleagues, family, whomever, who really know you and they know that Jennifer is going to try to boil the ocean today and tomorrow and next week, and Justin's going to try to boil the ocean. And you open yourself up to their input and invite it even. I have found for me, it helps me enjoy the present season because I think leaders are inherently driven, they're motivated, and they see the future. And at least for me, I'll speak for myself, I want to make the future that I see tomorrow, like
Yes, absolutely.
everything that I've got this picture of in my head, we got to get there quick.
Mhm.
And it's not possible and it's not even good because then you just kind of leave everybody else. So
Yep.
yeah, I think if you can, I think that's great advice, first of all. And I think it's helpful if you can invite other people who know you to speak into your life and really consider what they have to say and find out that it does help you. Like each of those present seasons become better and you're more effective in those seasons because you're just living and enjoying the season you're in.
That's right. Yeah.
So
And they have a way of leading into the other, you know?
yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%. And the other thing I'll say is I've found, so you and I are getting old enough now that we have some past. And
Yes.
I was doing this with my wife the other day, but I was like, if you would have gone back 10 years ago and said, "Hey, where do you want to be in 10 years?" That the 10-year outlook I had would not have been as good as the real 10 years. And so
Right.
just enjoying the present, you find out like the future, when I'm enjoying the present is better than the future I had in my head anyway.
That's exactly right.
All right, last question for you, Jennifer. If you could pass on one lesson, any lesson, doesn't have to be specific to leadership, but just one lesson to our audience, what would it be?
Be you. Don't try to own the gifts that God gave you and don't try to be someone else. I think a lot of times we struggle with insecurities as leaders. I know I do. Like for a long time, I didn't see myself as a leader. I didn't feel qualified. I didn't feel like I was worthy to be a leader. And then you see others around you, and you're like, oh, they can do that and they can do that. That, you know what? God gave that to them. That's for them to do. But what did He give me? Was my strength. And just be authentic and genuine. And again, I'll bring up Craig Groeschel again. He's one of my favorites. He has a saying that he says, people would rather follow a leader who's always real than one who's always right. When
Hmm.
you mess up, on it. We make mistakes. We're flawed. And I try to do that with my team all the time. Hey, I messed up. I'm so sorry. Apologize when you need to. Just be real. Be who you are and don't try to be something that you're not. Because people are going to see through it anyway.
Hmm.
You got to. So I think that's the biggest thing I would say is authenticity and humility are probably the two biggest characteristics I think of a good leader.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. And I think anyone who's modeled those and has tried to be something other than themselves finds out that it's not even sustainable to be fake. You might can do it for a season, but you're going to kill yourself and everybody's going to be worse off because you're trying to be some projection of yourself that you're not in real life.
Exactly. And I always tell the students when we have like award ceremonies and they're getting academic awards that this doesn't define you. This isn't, we're not all good at math. We're not all good at spelling and reading. There's some of us that are really good with our hands and are much more mechanical. And those are the gifts that God has given us. And He gives us all different gifts and unique gifts and talents. And thank God He does, because it'd be so boring if we all had the same one. But then when you put us together, we make a good team. So there's a method behind the madness, I think.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Well, hey, before I let you go, can you tell whoever might be listening to this where they could find out some more about CCA, find out some information about Columbus Christian Academy, just how to get in touch with you or with the school?
Sure. You can look at our website at columbuschristianacademy.org. You can also reach out by email at office@columbuschristianacademy.com. We have Facebook, YouTube, and all that good stuff as well. So just Columbus Christian Academy on Facebook and YouTube. So check us out.
All right. Well, Jennifer, thanks for the time. I really appreciate it. And I hope people are taking notes because you've got a lot of good experience. You've got a lot of good insight. And I have a lot of respect for you and what you've done. And so really appreciate it. And I hope this podcast as an encouragement to you and helps get the word out about CCA and the great leadership you all have over there.
Well, thank you, and thank you for taking the time to do this. I can't wait to see what you're going to do with it. I know it's going to be great.
Well, thanks. All right, and we'll see you guys next time. So thanks for listening.